I'm John Batchelor. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal, is here. Mary, the Veterans Administration scandal has now reached the point where we can talk about it politically. We don't have all the facts, but we have a large indication from the IG at the VA that this is a disgrace, and that it will be corrected. It can be corrected. But the politics of this, have you perceived these weeks now it's been, have you perceived that the White House has been cautious about this, has worried about it, Mary?
I think it's the same cycle that we saw at the IRS. It's the same cycle we saw at HHS with the implementation of Obamacare. These are big bureaucracies. They don't work. There's a scandal. There's a cover-up. The media gets wind of it, and the president orders an investigation.
He also says it's the first I heard of it.
Right, it's the first I've heard of it. It's been the moral cost of my presidency, blah, blah.
And he's usually mad.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Very mad, very angry.
After what we hear today, he's going to be really, really mad. Francis Rose of Federal News Radio, In Depth with Francis Rose, joins us. Francis, I'm presuming the explosions are continuing to go on in Washington. You can hear them out the door. The first, and this is a political interpretation, I take gravely these investigations of the VA, but this is politics now. Warner of Virginia, Merkley of Oregon, joining Shaheen and Franken. McCaskill. Well, McCaskill's not running for re-election significantly. She has no risk here, but I think I just named 4 senators running for re-election, all saying it's time for Shinseki to go. In other words, crossing the street from their own president. Do you discern a pattern here? Can you interpret this for us? Good evening, Francis.
Good evening, John and Mary. The pattern seems to be that these are all senators who are potentially in re-election bids where their opponent will hang around their necks. You are a yes man or yes woman for the president. And this is an opportunity politically, according to folks I talked to on the Hill today, for these senators to say, no, I'm not. President Obama is hanging on to his man. He's standing behind Secretary Shinseki, who has said the only person that I'll listen to in this should I stay or should I go cacophony is President Obama. I serve at the pleasure of the president, and as long as he wants me to stay, I'll stay. As soon as he wants me to go, I'll go, and not a moment before. So this is an opportunity for these senators to say, he's sticking with his guy, but we're against his guy. We're against the president on this issue, so that means we're not entirely at his beck and call.
Francis, it doesn't only help the Senate Democrats who are running for re-election, however. Doesn't it help the Democratic Party writ large to focus all of the attention on Eric Shinseki, who runs the VA, and his incompetence, rather than talk about this larger problem of the bureaucracy that just doesn't work, government healthcare that doesn't work?
Well, to some degree, I think that's probably reasonable, Mary. I will disagree with you and your opening dialogue with John before I came on the air about the comparisons to the IRS scandal and the HHS problems.
Well, this is much worse. People died. This is much worse.
This is much worse, and this is an endemic bureaucratic problem. I mean, I went back today and went on the Government Accountability Office website. They're the organization that looks at executive branch agencies on behalf of the legislative branch, House and Senate. And I searched on VA wait lists, and there are reports all the way back to the year 2000 on problems with waiting lists in the Department of Veterans Affairs.
The IG said yesterday they issued 18 reports since 2005. Everybody knew.
Yeah, this is an issue that is not limited to the Obama Veterans Affairs Department. This is an issue that's not limited even to the Bush Veterans Affairs Department. This has been a problematic agency in any number of different ways almost since there's been an agency. And so that is good for the political calculation of the Obama administration, I think. It's bad for the veterans who, despite the promises that Secretary Shinseki made when he came in, haven't seen the ball moved on this particular issue. Now, I saw a presentation by the Assistant Secretary of the VA, Allison Hickey, last week, and she made a very impassioned, very well-informed argument as to improvements that the VA has made, not in these areas, obviously, but improvements in the backlog for veterans receiving benefits, improvement in the appeals process for veterans who don't get the deal that they think they should have gotten. And these improvements are real. These are not ephemeral She's not chasing ghosts. These are real improvements. Why that message is not resonating with people, why that message is not getting out, I don't know. My colleague Jason Miller has a report on federalnewsradio.com about it, and the improvements that they've made that are concrete. They exist. But the focus is entirely on this scandal, understandably so, because as we learn more about it, it gets worse and worse.
I want to go through the list just momentarily, this pattern that Francis and Mary and I are talking about. Kay Hagan, running for re-election in North Carolina, calling for it. Braley, running for the open seat in Iowa, calling for this. This begins to look like a DNC strategy for re-election. Which is cynical enough, but after all, these are politicians. I expect them to be cynical. Their job is to get elected. The question here, Francis, is does this go to the White House? Do they have a solution for the next 5 months? It's all very well and good. They're calling for Shinseki to go. Is that going to stop it? Does the White House think if he departs, then it goes off the headlines?
Well, the interesting angle there, John, is that there's one politician in Washington who's very conspicuously saying, I'm not calling for him to resign, and that's John Boehner. He said today, he reiterated something he said several times in the last couple of weeks, which is, if Secretary Shinseki resigns, that doesn't fix the problem. That doesn't make the problem go away. And he's exactly right about that. As far as your point about a political calculation, I don't know if it goes to the White House, but let's just speculate. I have no reason to believe that this could happen, but let's say tomorrow afternoon's Friday dump at 4 p.m. is Secretary Shinseki has offered to resign, and I've accepted his resignation.
That's a very good speculation. That's based on a lot of experience. Go ahead, Francis.
But let's say that happens. That does give all of those senators an opportunity over the weekend and into next week to go to all of the events that they're attending, because the Senate's not in this week. They're all in their home states. That gives them a chance to go to all these events and say, listen, I've got weight with the President of the United States. I called for Secretary Shinseki to resign, and he's gone. And that it could potentially be a compelling argument. If you're in a 1 or 2 point race, if you're Mark Pryor in Arkansas, or some of the other senators like him, Kay Hagan, as you mentioned.
They hit Begich very hard this week because he's on Veterans Affairs, and they had details. I saw one ad. This is being bought by 50, outside money.
Yeah,
I saw one detail that the VA hospital in Alaska are struggling. Yeah.
If you're one of those senators and you can make the point in a 1 or 2 point race that you have pull with the President of the United States, that could help you out quite a bit.
Yeah, but the problem is they can't propose a solution because they don't want the only solution that's going to work, which is to privatize the system. There's no reason the government should have a special, separate system for veterans.
Yeah, you talked about vouchers, right, Mary?
Sure. I mean, how about the immediate solution? What happens today? Why aren't you giving these veterans who need care today a voucher to go get care from their nearest private hospital, or any hospital for that reason?
Well, there are already a couple of bills circulating around the Hill on the House side, Mary, to do exactly that, and I wouldn't be surprised to see at least some patch-type bills to give veterans, 6 months, 12 months opportunity to do that. I don't have any sense of what kind of success those would have, because you're right, that would open a crack. That would start the slippery slope toward a lot more of the private sector being involved in caring for veterans. There are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are a little queasy about that concept.
Francis Rose of Federal News Radio, in-depth Francis Rose, and he gives a fair warning. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., if you're in the district, do not stand under a window, because that's the first opportunity for something to go flying out of it. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, John.
It's always a pleasure. Opinion Journal each day at 1 p.m. East Coast time. I'm John Batchelor.